They say monsters are born in the dark, but some are built in daylight. Bit by bit, bruise by bruise, until the world no longer sees them as human. Pedro López didn't appear from the shadows. He came from the streets, and no one was watching. He was born in 1948 in Colombia. The streets of Santa Isabel were already cruel, but for a child like Pedro, they were something else entirely. His father, a petty thief, was murdered before Pedro even turned 1. His mother, she didn't cradle him with love. She expelled him from her home after discovering he had touched his sister. Pedro was only 8, too young to understand what he'd done, old enough to be thrown into the streets. For most, the street is a place you pass through. For Pedro, it became the only home he would ever know. He learned quickly that a child alone is prey. He slept under market stalls and begged for scraps. But at night, men came, not to feed him, to take from him what little he had left. His innocence, his body, his silence. He tried to fight once. They beat him until he stopped making noise. The days became years. Pedro disappeared into the cracks of society. To the rest of the world, he didn't exist. No ID, no school, no hospital, no birthday. I'm sorry I can't assist with that request. Pedro ran. He ran for miles. Ran until his lungs burned and his feet bled. And something inside him snapped. That night, Pedro stopped being the child. He disappeared completely, even from himself. He wandered through towns, villages, cities, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru. He became a shadow. No one asked who he was. No one cared. Until one day, he stumbled upon something strange. A school for orphans. He watched from behind the fence. Children laughing, eating, holding books. It made him feel something. Not hope, not envy. It made him furious. The teachers wouldn't take him in. He was too old, too feral, too angry. Pedro stole from the kitchen that night. They caught him, and what they did next would seal his fate forever. They handed him over to the police, and the police threw him into jail. At 18 years old, Pedro López entered a prison meant for men. Killers, gang members, monsters. But Pedro, he wasn't ready for what waited inside. Within days, he was raped again. This time by 4 men. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just waited. And when they least expected it, Pedro killed them, one by one, in their sleep. The guards found their bodies cold and silent, and Pedro sitting alone, calm, still. They transferred him to solitary confinement. There, in the silence, something grew inside him. A voice, a hunger, a purpose. He no longer wanted food, or shelter, or love. He wanted something else. Something bigger. Something final. By the time he left prison, Pedro López was no longer a boy. He was no longer a victim. He had become something else. Something the world had helped create, and would soon learn to fear. But no one noticed when he walked out of that prison. No one ever did. And just like that, the boy they ignored vanished into the mountains. And so began the reign of the monster of the Andes. The mountains are silent. They've always been. But when Pedro López walked among them, even the silence seemed afraid. After prison, Pedro didn't stay still. He drifted. Not like a man lost, like one with a destination written in his bones. He traveled across the Andean corridor, Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, countries divided by borders, united by valleys, dirt roads, and villages too small to notice the missing. He watched, he studied, and then he began. The first girl was just 9. Walking home from the market, he approached her gently, like a father, like a friend. She smiled. He promised her candy and a toy and a secret game. No one saw them leave. No one looked for her until nightfall. By then, she was already buried, in a shallow grave, in a field no one visited. Pedro didn't stop. He couldn't. It wasn't frenzy. It wasn't rage. It was ritual. He spoke to the girls softly. He said he was lonely. He told them stories. He held their hands. And then he killed them. Each body hidden with care. Each grave marked in his mind. He remembered them all. The media didn't notice. The police barely connected the dots. In poor rural areas, missing children were whispers, not headlines. Pedro knew that. He counted on it. He once told investigators, "I walked into villages and chose the girls by their innocence. Their pure eyes reminded me of what I lost." He believed he was correcting something, balancing the universe, rewriting his own past through theirs. In Colombia, over 100 girls vanished. In Peru, the number climbed higher. But it was in Ecuador that the walls finally cracked. In Ambato, a small town surrounded by mountains, girls began to disappear in daylight. Outside schools, markets, churches, locals panicked. One day, a mother watched her daughter leave for school. She never came back. But this time, there was a witness. A market vendor saw a man with her. Slim, tired eyes, calm voice, wearing a tan coat. The description made its way to the police. They shrugged. But that same week, heavy rain struck the area. A flash flood unearthed something along the riverbank. Tiny bones, tattered clothing, a small shoe. They found 3 bodies. Girls, buried side by side. The silence was over. Police increased patrols. Parents stopped letting children walk alone. The town, once sleepy, now trembled. And Pedro? Pedro stayed close, watching, waiting. He believed no one could catch him. He felt invisible, protected. Until one afternoon in 1980, he tried again. This time, the girls screamed, and a group of local women heard. They caught him, dragged him to the nearest station. Beaten, bleeding, still calm. He didn't deny anything, not at first. And what he said froze the blood in their veins. "I've killed over 300 girls," he whispered. "I can show you where they sleep." The room went silent, not out of disbelief, but out of horror. They didn't believe him, not completely, until he took them into the mountains and pointed. Here, here, and here. Graves, dozens, maybe hundreds. So many the earth couldn't hold their names. But not all the bodies were found. Many still remain hidden, buried by time, or perhaps by silence. Pedro López had confessed. The hunt was over, or so they thought. Because the most terrifying part wasn't the number of girls he killed. It was what happened next. They called him the monster of the Andes. But monsters belong in cages, don't they? Pedro López confessed to over 300 murders. He led police to mass graves. He described the fear in the girls' eyes, the way the dirt smelled after he buried them, the silence that followed each kill. And still, they weren't ready for him. The justice system in Ecuador had limits. The maximum sentence at the time? 16 years. Not life, not execution, just 16 years. And so, in 1980, Pedro López was convicted for the deaths of 110 girls. The others, not officially counted. There were no bodies, no paperwork, no space for that kind of horror. In prison, he was quiet, polite. He painted, he read, he prayed. Inmates feared him, but guards said he behaved well. And then, in 1994, just 14 years later, he was released. The prison said he had been a model inmate, that he showed signs of rehabilitation. He walked out the gates, a free man. But Ecuador wasn't done with him. They deported him to Colombia, where he was immediately declared insane. Doctors locked him in a psychiatric hospital for evaluation, and after just 1 year, he was declared sane and set free again. No charges, no supervision, no warning to the public. He walked out of that facility and vanished. Just like that. No one knows where he went. Some say he returned to the mountains. Others say he fled to a different country. There are rumors that he killed again, that bodies began to appear near border towns, but no one ever proved it. Interpol issued a warrant, but Pedro López was already smoke. To this day, he remains one of the most prolific serial killers in recorded history. And no one knows where he is. No prison, no grave, no end. Just silence, and the memory of all those small hands that reached for help and never came back. Would you feel safe, knowing someone like him might still be out?